Hello guys, it's Matt. I am a compulsive gambler in recovery. Welcome to the video. I like to think of myself as your mind and movement mentor, here to help you. So I was reflecting back on my gambling days earlier, which I like to do, or which I can't stop doing in many ways, but I do like to do to kind of anchor the emotions of what it was like at that time. And there's a part of me that doesn't like the idea of ever forgetting about that because it could breed to complacency. And I thought I'm going to do a video today. And I thought, what am I going to talk about? Can I give someone that was in my position a few years ago an epiphany, a moment that resonates, something that hits them quite hard and makes them think differently, act differently? And I was kind of thinking what the worst part of the gambling was. And I know there's that old saying, you shouldn't look back, it just hurts your neck. What's gone in the past is gone, live in the present moment. And I think a lot of that is very true and very valid. I think there's something to be said for enjoying the now and not constantly going back to the past. But I think in reflective moments, it can be good leverage. And I thought, what was the worst part about it? And my brain immediately went to the monetary side. It went to owing people money, seeing people who I'd owed money to and not met the deadline in which I said I was going to pay them, and it just kind of being cringe, and it just kind of being like, oh, like a sicky feeling in the gut of you're not sure if they're going to bring it up. Do you bring it up? But then it's going to have to be some sort of lie or half-truth to kick it down the road further. You don't know if it's going to disrupt the friendship. It feels like there's an uneven kind of transactional uneven power dynamic in the relationship, which is just not pleasant for anyone. And you really kind of go into your head, and so much of my mental bandwidth was absorbed with thinking about where I was going to get the next money to place a bet, what would that be on, just kind of the flywheel effect of the addiction, just kind of constantly wanting to be in motion, so just full mental bandwidth constantly absorbed. But then I thought, actually, on deeper reflection, it probably isn't that. That was a real difficult and unpleasant byproduct of it. And it's not just a flippant thing to say, money doesn't matter, money comes and goes, because at that time it's incredibly real. Money does distort relationships. A lot of negative feelings come from lack of money and that. But after reflecting deeper, I think it was actually more the way that the gambling addiction just makes you feel withdrawn, and it makes you feel isolated. And you kind of think this horrible combination of no one's really going to take me seriously if I say anything about it. And just I'm in this all by myself. And I think some of that is, and I've spoken about this in other videos, some of that is the real sadistic nature of addiction, where it wants to do that to you. And I almost like to think of it as a force in itself, this like devilish like force, because it wants you to stay where you're at. And olive branches out to people that can help will essentially ruin that. So I've said before, I really do feel like it's almost like a parasite on the mind that kind of wants to sort of self-perpetuate. So that was for sure the worst part, the idea of just feeling really alone in it, feeling like, I remember a few times that I really wanted to say to people, and I could always had like a logical rationale of why I shouldn't. They would almost become like these ogres, and even people really close to me, friends, family, that were then going to suddenly turn round, and it was going to be more of a problem to say and confess than it was just to retreat and stay in my own mind. And there was all these reasons why they were going to say this, they were going to do that, they were going to do, And on some level, I kind of knew that they would probably support me through it, but there's a real kind of blockage and a real sort of barrier there. And this is something that if you're really struggling with it, I would really consider sitting with yourself and reflecting on this. Because sometimes, yes, if you're in a really difficult situation and you confess, it does feel like a weight has been really lifted off you. But at the same time, that kind of then gets passed on to the other person. If they don't currently know about it, as much as you will feel lighter in the moment, you are essentially kind of passing that. And that shouldn't be an excuse not to do it, but it should be kind of a consideration. And I just remember I found it so hard to say anything, even though I knew sort of daily it wasn't going to end well. There was no way I could gamble my way out of this. The longer that I was in it, I was just preventing myself from being my best self, going on to do other things I wanted to do, hopes, dreams, goals in my life. I remember once kind of being in London and I had a bet on the number of goals that was going to be in the Premier League football matches for the day. And there was one game at 5:30, which is the last game, and I needed there to be, I think it was just needed there to be one goal. So I was very optimistic, kind of going into it. One game, yeah, nice and easy. Sure enough, the game ended up 0-0. And I remember on the full-time whistle, there was someone hit the post, I think, in the last minute. It was kind of frantic, just absolute, just range of emotions that, you know, the kind of thing that they lead with in the gambling industry of just like the ecstasy and then but when you're an addict, it's just, it's horrible. There's no joy even when you win. And I remember just immediately WhatsApping my other half later on full time saying, I need to speak to you about something. Don't let me get out of it. And that was kind of my way of, in this moment, I don't feel like I've got the courage to say it, but if I say that, I know I've kind of half said it, and then you'll bring it up, and then we'll have conversations. And in some ways, it could be seen as a little bit cowardly, but just at that time, I was never going to tell her what I'd done, but I wanted it to stop there and then. So a slight interference with the camera. I wanted it to stop there and then. So from that point, I just fired the message, and it was just like I didn't have the courage for a phone call and a 10-minute chat, but I had a burst of courage to kind of send a message that inevitably ended up with us leading to conversations and discussions, and that was really, really helpful and really productive. So sometimes the people around you love you, support you. They might not know much about the addiction, but if they care about you, they will probably almost certainly want to work with you on it. And it can be very tough at the start, but if you know you're really, really struggling and you feel isolated, and I can really, really relate to that, like I say, that is probably what I would regard as the worst part about it. And there's many, many facets that are all very, very difficult. So I hope that might help someone. Please share this video with someone who you know might be struggling. I make these videos to talk to essentially a younger me of something that I would have found useful as a resource. If you get an opportunity to support the channel in any way by liking, subscribing, I'll be eternally grateful. And I will talk to you in the next video very soon.